And welcome everyone to another exciting adventure on the energy that surrounds us. I'm your host, Michael, and tonight's guest is a rather unique guest. He has a different background in the paranormal than I usually have on, so I'm super excited to have him on. And I normally don't do this, but I feel called to do this tonight, and that is to say thank you to co host Diego. He is the one who recommended tonight's guest. So if you haven't seen him on his show before, welcome to seeing him on mine for the first time. However, if you want to see a lot of his stuff, Diego has an awesome show. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to my guest to introduce himself to you all. I give you the one, the only film extraordinaire, Jason J. Tavares.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Yeah, my name is Jason J. Tavares. You can just refer to me as Jason. That's just the name I use for the books I write and films that I make. But yeah, I'm a paranormal investigator, an author, a script writer, and I make short films. I'm starting to venture into bigger films, though. The last one I put out, which I had sent to you maybe about a couple weeks ago, the seemingly Curtis Cusbelch. That was the first time I ever did like a 50-minute film. So that was probably the longest I've ever made to this point with one camera.
So, when you're making these films, what is like, do you feel like is the hardest part to doing a film that you feel like probably keeps a lot of people from doing films?
It used to be getting people, but that's not hard anymore. I have like a lot of people coming to me. But with me, it used to be like the technology piece. I've always been kind of scared of technology. And my camera's old. It's a 2012 camera. I don't know how much longer it's going to hang on for. But I think the biggest struggle with it is the follow through, especially with like the seemingly Curtis Cusbelch film I had sent to you. That's a 50-minute film with over 400 scenes. So just to make it look, like a higher quality camera, even though the camera doesn't look too bad, I think putting all that effort into something where you may not get a exact reward out of it, I think that stops people from making films.
So, what what advice would you give to someone who maybe is sitting there saying, everybody's making films today, maybe I could do it, but like you're saying, the technology, they're like, nope, I'm not that tech savvy. So is there any advice you have for people watching this that you could help them overcome that maybe?
Yeah, because I'm very bad with technology. I've gotten a lot better with it through the years, and I would suggest probably writing everything out and making things easier for you. Like, let's say you were experimenting with the camera and you discovered something, or even with writing, like you're writing a script, or you saw that something looks a certain way that you liked. Definitely write it down because let's say you were playing with the camera and you're doing some practice stuff with it and you like what you had and then you don't come back to it for 3 weeks, you may forget all that and get discouraged again. So it's better to write something down and write it down in a way that you'll understand because it's you going back to your own notes. You're not showing them to anybody else. You kind of want. I used to do that when I wrote, but I write books still. I have a new book coming out, but my other three books that I had wrote, sometimes I had to take a month away. So what I would do is I'd make a clothesline in my house with sticky notes, and anybody who came over, they'd look at my desk and be like, "What the heck is that?" And I'm like, "It's the way I manage things. I have a color coding system. I got arrows pointing to this one. There's a note on the desk. There's a note on the wall, on the clothesline itself. And if I was out somewhere, I'd jot it on napkins and come home and stick it somewhere else with tape and so on and so forth. And that helped me to remember where I was with the books. So it actually helps when you're doing films too, because you can go back to your frame of reference. I mean, if you have to take a long time away from something, and let's say the technology is the issue or something like that, it's even better to write the weather down, write what you were wearing that day, what mood you were in, something to take place. Because if you take a long time away, You can go back to it and you remember, oh, geez, I remember it was pouring raining that day. I had a flat tire. I had on a red shirt and I spilled food on it or something like that. You can go right back to where you were and go back to your mindset then, and that'll make it easier for you as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And one thing that you always see, and nowadays with like Marvel and other movies, is beyond the blooper reels or extended, is where you see like the actors all cutting up, and hanging out offset, or having fun with each other. Do you find that that helps with the filming process, or do you think that is something that is reserved just for the Hollywood type actors, and the real actors that I'll say, like in your type of scenario, it's better to keep it a specific atmosphere, so to
That's
speak?
actually a great question. I think having more control over the cast members when you're writing it and directing it and doing all that comes into play when you're on a time crunch or the people that are in it don't want to be there. Like if, whenever somebody asks about my films, hey, can I be in a film? I try to get it right down to the wire. I always have a contingent person, and I make sure you're not doing me any favors by being there. And that's very important to get that out there because some people will want to do it. Let's say I ran into you at Walmart. Let's say we're talking in line, and let's say I had a hat on that said director or something on my shirt, and we're talking about film, and I say I make films, and you're like, oh, I'd like to be in a film. You may have said it in that moment. I can't hold you to that, even if we talked on the phone later on, because then I'm going to be directing somebody that feels like they were on the spot. So the people I have, I don't have that problem with. They're like, hey, when are we doing the next one? And I tell them, hey, it might be all day we're filming. I got 4 pages to do, and they're all cool. Like this last seemingly Curtis Cusbelch, I got 5 of the people from one guy, and I met him in 2017. I even put a special thanks at the end of the film for him. I met him in 2017 on a movie that we were in together called The Cars That Made America. We were board members, I think, for Ford. It was a really cool film. He had more days than I did. I was only in there one day. We talked in 2017, and we just started talking again 3 months ago. I just hadn't seen him in all that time. He's commented on my YouTube. I've commented on his, but he's a very good actor. Like he could do like TV or movies. This guy, and he goes, "Oh, I have other people that are interested too." And I said, "Okay." Well, he brought me other people that are interested, and they're all the equivalent to him in acting. So now I got like 6 people all coming to me. Hey, when's the next film? So now making a 50-minute film, I have to do less of what you had said, of trying to like coax people or be authoritative because they're all older too. I mean, because these people are all like late 40s and 50s like me. So it just kind of makes it easier because they want to be there. They're not looking at their watches, even though they may have other things to do. They know how to allocate time to be there, knowing what goes into it with one camera, especially when you're doing 400 cuts to make a 50-minute film look, like it's a step above, not just something you threw together.
Right. And one of the questions I have for you about your filmmaking is, do you ever come across actors, like when I was in theater, I would be like, the day of filming, so to speak, if it was filming, be off script and be able to recite the lines. Do you ever have days where you're sitting there and going, the line is this, you got to deliver this? Why, what's so hard about this line? And
Yeah.
having to say to the actors, did you study the script? Or do you kind of give them a little bit of free reign and go, well, maybe it sounds better that way, and just keep rolling with it?
Well, you're gonna laugh about this one. I don't make them study anything. I feed them the line. I have them deliver it, and if they have to change it to fit how they speak, if it's slightly different than how it's worded, because not everybody says things the same way, like you said, I'll have a card all written out about that size and magic marker, and it'll be behind somebody. It'll have another one behind them if the lines are continuous. And I say, read right off the card, as long as the intent is there, like the dog crossed the street. You can't say the dog drove a car. because that's not the intent. So as long as the intent's there and it's in your own way of saying it, we get it done like that. And I have like if lines look like they'll be difficult or the words are big, I have the cards written up and it's quick. I'm like over prepared. And I got like a big military duffel bag. I call it a movie in a bag. Because I'll show up and I'll say, oh, I got a little more stuff in the car, but I got all this stuff. So I got the boards. I have this, which was in the dumpster where my girlfriend works. I don't know if you can see it, where the latex ringer bags hang on it
Right.
for IVs. This thing's great because you can wheel it behind somebody if you're like out in the woods. I got clips, clip their lines right on it, hang it. When they're done, zoop, move it here. So on and so forth. Like it looks corny, but it's convenient, and it kind of
Well,
makes something that's complicated not so complicated.
right. And I think that's really cool because a lot of people are like, hey, I suck at memorization. And so they think I can't do film then. And so you're giving them the opportunity to say, if you can memorize it, great. If you can't, great. It's
Yeah,
right there. Just deliver it in the moment. And that's all I ask. And so that's really cool of you. And I think that, is something that maybe, some other people may pick up and do, especially like you're saying, if it's a heavy worded scene or heavy concept theme moment that people don't normally talk like sciencey languaging, and you're like, oh man, there's a lot of science in this one scene. It's nice to have those cards to go, that's the word, okay.
yeah. And like you said, though, it's nice to give somebody an opportunity because, like, I've never had extensive speaking lines in a big film, like an hour and a half film. I've had a couple of lines in a few films, did extra work, but I never like I was never like a George Clooney or a Brad Pitt or somebody like that. So I said, hey, why don't I make like my shorts are pretty good, and I look back on them now. I like the 50-minute stuff better, like the one with the seemingly Curtis Cusbelch film, because it gives a lot of people an opportunity to A, be seen more, and then B, use what I made as their acting reel. It's not just a small clip like the one I'm making now, which is going to come out in May. The guy that gave me all the people in the last movie, I made him the star of this movie. So he's already been over here like 4 times in like a month, and he's got 4 more times we have to meet because he has so many parts in this movie. But when it's done, he now has a 50-minute movie that he stars in, and it'll have like over 400 scenes, and it's an extremely interesting story. The only downfall is it's done with one camera because I don't. It's not that I can't go buy another camera. It's just I need 2 or 3 people to really make it look great, and I don't have 2 or 3 people that can show up when everybody else can to do camera work and be there the whole day. So I just make it what it is. I'm try to make the most interesting story I can with what I have.
And one of the things I found interesting when I was watching behind the scenes kind of show with like Hallmark as an example, they're like, hey, we will do start from finish 6 weeks, boom, you got a 2 hour movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that seems so fast. But, you're realizing you're like 8 to 6 filming. And so it's a long day. It's 6 weeks of long days.
Yeah.
So when you're filming your projects, do you say to everybody who's going to be in, hey, I need a week or 2 weeks where we're here from these set hours? Or is it like you said, where, hey, this actor's only available on Tuesday from this time, so we're filming this guy at this time and this guy at this time? Do you work
Well,
with their schedules or do you give a schedule?
I work with theirs because beggars can't be choosers. That's kind of how my films are right now. So since all these people are enthusiastic about it, the way I wrote seemingly Curtis Cusbelch was a little different. I knew I had 15 people to work with, so I used all 15, but I never used more than 2 at any given time. But then some parts, like I'd say, hey, I need you today, and then whenever I can get you 2 guys again, we'll do this and this, and it looks like everybody overlaps, but they don't, and you're getting an interesting story. The only thing I did hear from one guy who commented on the movie after it came out, he said, what was that thing he said? He goes, yeah, he goes, you didn't develop the characters enough. He goes, they're developed, but I want to know the backstory. And that was a great comment because it means he was interested in what he watched. But I can't really give you an extreme backstory and not exceed 50 minutes. Because now I'm giving you a miniseries. I'm giving you like a 2 hour movie
Yeah.
instead of 50 minutes. So if he was that intrigued with it, I thought that was cool because, hey, you must have liked the characters and got into them and wanted to see more of them.
See, and I liked when I was watching your film. At first, it's like I was watching it, and I didn't even realize that all the characters were not actually present. It's like I'm sitting here watching and I'm thinking these people are really interacting with each other. And then as the film progressed, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. No, these this one person's not always there and
Yeah.
he's not there. Wait a minute. This is getting kind of more interesting. And
Yeah, I
it's
tried
like,
that, especially with the after Stuggy Salvati and I fought, and I found out the next day from I can't remember her name, the character's name. I know the woman's name, but the character that I made, she was saying that my ex is dead because Stuggy killed her. So that was an easy way to finish with her, have Stuggy gone, and then have the relationship end and have the character move on. You know, you got to use three characters. They all got seen in great scenes, and I can move on, and now I can get people that can be there another day. So I kind of had to write it that way to have it fit in. But yeah, at the end, you realize, hey, geez, there wasn't a lot of overlap, but it felt like overlap, like you did see people together, even though they weren't. But
yeah,
you can
and
envision Stuggy being, liking that girl and actually breaking into her place from what was said.
honestly, I was getting more like a Sixth Sense vibe where I started watching it and thinking, oh, this guy is doesn't realize he's on the other side and
Yeah.
is interacting on this side. And and I was like, wow, she's having a conversation with a ghost is where I was going. And I was like, man, that was really cool how you did that, because you didn't realize it until later in the movie and going, wait, he's what? Whoa, that was really cool how these interactions took place, and you didn't realize that. And I love movies like that where they like have you going along and you're like, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then drop this one moment and you're like, wait, now you just totally made this a whole different movie. I got to go back and rewatch this because this now is like a totally different experience. And I love how you did that in the movie.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, I don't have much to work with when it comes to money wise. So that movie was supposed to be an 80-minute film for $500. I was not going to exceed $500. But when I finish it, like the way I do it kind of quickly, is like, let's say we did our scenes today, and I knew there's nothing going to intervene in our scenes. That's like a segment, 25 scenes, whatever it may be. You and somebody else I filmed together. I'll go home and then the next morning at like 5 or 6 in the morning, I do the post production on that. So I'll splice all that together, and then that's like section A or whatever I call it. And then you figure you got 400 cuts with one camera. That may only come out to 9 whole segments that I just have to drop in and render when it's done. All done. You finish it quickly that way. But like you notice that too, like as you were saying, like you don't see it till after it's done. Another part like that was Morella being slapped by her boss at the fruit stand. I never show that, but it's spoken of so much. She tells her friend about it. It comes out when the peppermint plant was in the house, and her friend
Right.
said, "Oh, is he a guy ghost?" And da da da, and they're talking, and then you see it when he actually kills the guy, but you don't show him killing the guy. And then when he buries the guy, you don't see anybody in the hole, but him feeling bad about the action. And then his father visits him. So yeah, I try to do as much as I can to show a visualization without actually having to show every scene, but not just talking about it. It's spoken of and then vaguely showed for people to think more than, hey, here it is. Like a lot of stuff is. Some things show you too much, and you don't get to think. Like
Right.
something a movie like No Country for Old Men. I can watch that 20 times and I still think of more things because they don't show you everything.
Yeah,
Movies
and
like that I like.
Yeah, and what I like is because the first book I wrote about the paranormal, I didn't use any pictures because you know how in the paranormal community everybody's like, that's my photo, that's my photo. And so I was like, avoid that, don't use photos. And at first, everybody was like, hey, you're asking me to read a book that has no pictures to go along with everything, and it'd be better if you did. And then after they read how I wrote it, they were like, your words painted the picture.
That's
And
cool.
so that was really cool. And you drew me in with your words. And when I noticed in the movie, like you're saying, when she got hit, I didn't need to see she got smacked by that guy.
Yeah,
It's like the way it was delivered, I was like, you knew it. There was no need to go back and show it because the way you wrote it and the way that the actors portrayed it, you knew it. And so, yeah, I feel like if you had went back and did it, that would have been like, man, that should have really been a deleted scene
yeah,
because you're adding too much to the movie.
yeah. And then us being together at the end was kind of like a nice icing on the cake, so to speak, because like he had a failed relationship. He should have killed his friend Stuggy Salvati when they fought. They should have gone further than just fighting like we did. And that fight scene too, that was all done with one camera. Like everything else, it was move the camera here, move the camera there. We probably should have done a little more, but we were losing sunlight, and he couldn't be there for another week. And I said, let's just try to do all we can today. But yeah, like at the end, like I was saying, it gives that feeling. He kind of had like some salvation at the end because now he's with somebody and there's nobody intervening like Stuggy was. And so he actually, by killing her boss, he didn't fix what happened to the girl from the other town or the city wherever he lived. But at the same time, it didn't happen again. He wasn't going to go down that road and allow somebody to be hurt again. Little
Right.
vigilanteism there, but I guess kind of helped in that situation or that story, I should say.
And so, are these stories that you're filming, are they all kind of like a hybrid of personal experience with something you came across and thought, hey, this could make a really cool movie? Or where do you decide, one, what the movie is going to be about, and two, what parts of the scene really makes and what parts get edited out?
With that, I did like with almost everything I write, to include books. I'll have a beginning, middle, and end before I have even begin. It's like, and I'll just kind of make like a pyramid, kind of like the Bridgewater Triangle or the Bermuda Triangle. It's like, this is going to be kind of what we're seeing at the start. I want this to be the highlight, more or less, and then how I want it to trail off. And then I just make it bigger. So, like, outlines for me are more or less like 3 sentences. And I'll write them on a napkin or wherever I'm at, like, oh, I got an idea, and jot it down. And then I've been doing that with short stories too. The short story book I'm putting out, some of my short stories were just jotted on a napkin. I found it. You can write 5 to 6. At least I can write 5 to 6,000 words in about 3 days. So doing short stories, I had wrote a whole group of short stories in 2016, and I just put them away and did nothing with them. And now I'm going to publish them soon. So they just kind of sat there. But those were done in the same way as the movies, just a simple beginning, middle, end, and then just kind of run with it and move the middle to where you need it to be to get that feeling out of people if you're able to, reach them in that way. But I noticed with seemingly Curtis Cusbelch, like you watched it, you got something out of it and you enjoyed it. A lot of people watching it don't understand it. They're like, is he dead? Is he from space? I said, I didn't say anything about space.
Where did space come from?
Yeah, is he a vampire? And it's like, no, he's not a vampire. It's like, wow, it's like, oof. But you're gonna get that. I mean, it's constructive criticism. I guess you just gotta take it, for what it is.
Well, but another way to look at it too is, how talented your film is that everybody has seen something different in the same scenario. And so that actually to me I think would be a great compliment actually because you obviously didn't script like quote vampire in it, but
Uh,
since
like,
someone's seen a vampire, it's like, I could kind of see where they might get that idea. That's really cool how that was, what they perceived from it. versus everybody going, yeah, I see it. This is this, and it becomes a one and done movie. A
Yeah,
lot of people don't rewatch those, but when you watch it and you see vampire, or wait, no, maybe he's ghost, or oh wait, maybe he's this. I think
I think
people will
somebody
go
asked
back and
about the
rewatch.
yeah the vampire part. I think they asked about because when he's at the beach and he looks down and sees himself in the hole, I try to make it as if he's leaving something behind. And somebody I know watched it like, well, isn't he a vampire if he was in the grave and then he's hugging his father? I said his father was a ghost. He was. I'm like, ah. It's like, all right, try watching it again. Maybe get another view. Have him watch it again. I guess. So
Yeah, but I gotta say, I'm amazed, and I do short little video ads, and I'll say for me, it took to create those to where I can reuse them and not have to create them every single week. That I will say honestly took me probably like 2 or 3 days to put together, not, sitting there full time, just working here and there, and then looking at it and going, wait, no, that doesn't work now. This, I want this, and then figuring out, okay, yeah, that works. So is that kind of when you're putting the movies together and the snippets, making all the scenes flow? Is that kind of what you do? Is you're like, oh, I'm gonna look at this section now
yeah, I'll
and
look at
going, well,
it,
this
and then if
flows, this doesn't, so maybe skip this part, and yeah, this ties it in, so yeah, let's put this in here. And is that kind of a
oh
little bit
yeah,
of
I do that, and a lot of times, like for the newer stuff, like the seemingly Curtis Cusbelch, I try to cut really sharp. So like my older films, I'm not knocking the post production guy, but one of the post production guys I had, he's great at it with putting in um, like sparkly things at the end of the scenes and stuff like that. But he didn't cut right in the film, so like when a character turns, you should see what they're looking at. It shouldn't be a long wait, and I noticed a lot of that, and I think a way to correct, like you were saying in the story, if you have something where like, geez, I want this to look a certain way, you could add in so many tiny things that even if you didn't film it, you could use your own hand if it was a guy in the scene and you needed to do it. You can drive back over there and film something like with your own hand or wear the similar clothes from behind to add in little pieces that are needed that you may have not done when they were there. So I correct a lot of stuff like that, and some of it looks good. Like I didn't have I had a guy, but the guy who was laying on the ground, who Curtis Cusbelch buries alive basically for hitting Marilla, that's me on the ground. And I didn't have the guy because he didn't show, and he goes, I don't know if I want to be in it. So I was like, then don't be in it. I went in my backyard, set up the camera, put on a mullet wig, laid down on the ground, filmed it, and spliced it right in. I said, oh, looks good to me. The character ran. He yelled at the character about, hitting the girl at the fruit stand. And the next scene, they show the guy on the ground. And it wasn't a long scene, but it kind of pieced together so people would know, he just didn't run furiously like that with the shovel for no reason. That's the end result. So I made myself the end result because I didn't have a character. But yeah, like you do in a way, I got to piece it together and make it make sense. And then if I'm doing too much work, I shut it down and I look at it in the morning. Because if you look at it too much, you won't even. It's like reading your own work. You can't. You have to go back to it. Sometimes you have to take a break.
and do you ever when you're filming be like, okay, this is what my thoughts were and this is how I wanted it to unfold, and then you're watching it and going, no, this doesn't work, give me 5 minutes and try and figure out, okay, what would look better, and then try again? Or do you stick to your original as much as possible?
Well, I ask a lot of suggestions too. Like I might have an idea that I think is great, and I'll ask whomever's there. So, what do you guys think of this? And here, there, because sometimes people will come up with stuff, and it makes what you had better. So it's like I always ask suggestions. I say, unless I really like it and I feel it needs to be there, I'll just try to make it the best I can. But a lot of times I say, is there any way we can fix this or make it look better? What do you guys think? And you'd be amazed. You ask somebody's opinion, they'll come up with something like in seemingly Curtis Cusbelch at the bleachers when the homeless girl skips around the bleachers. She had asked me, she goes, "Oh, can I skip?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "That'd be cool if you skip." So I filmed her skipping around the bleachers, and it made her character, which was kind of loony, that much more colorful in that scene because you think, gee, she'd be down being homeless. Well, she was down during the conversation, but she was still happy enough after the two characters spoke to skip to her spot on the side of the bleachers,
Right.
and I thought it looked pretty cool.
No, I think that's great, and that might be a testament to why your movies, so many people are getting into them and wanting to partake is because a lot of times you'll hear the actors going, "Well, I made this suggestion, but the director shot me down and was like, pretty much told me if I open my mouth again and suggest this, my career's over." So they're like, "Nope, we're just gonna memorize, do what I'm told, and that's that."
Yeah.
And so the fact that you're open and, like you said, encourage them to give their own input, I think it kind of shows in the acting because they're like, they're making it more their own and not your vision coming to life. It's everyone's vision coming to life,
Yeah.
if
And
that
I told
makes
them
sense.
too, I said, this is something I said, when this is all said and done, like if it's a hard day, like seemingly Curtis Cusbelt, some of the days were 28 degrees. We had one day it was 27 degrees, the part where I'm walking to the bus stop, which actually it was an abandoned Big Lots. I just said, hey, from this angle, it looks like a bus stop. So we ended up using that. That was a freezing day. It was like 26 or 27 degrees. And I told her, I said, wear long johns, wear a coat. She showed up and, she wanted to be there and she belted out her lines. And, that was her first time ever acting. And I was like, geez, I said, I don't think I'm a good actor at all. I think I'm like a B actor, but I love B acting, like Ed Wood, Ed Wood movies, things like that. And I'm somewhere between like Ed Wood and like pretty good acting. But a lot of these people I work with are like very good actors and actresses. So it makes it cool, and they're actually very easygoing. So it makes my job easy. Plus, I get good suggestions.
That's really cool. And so you mentioned being an author and writing some short stories. Do you have any plans of taking these short stories and making adaptations on film of them, or are you going to keep them short stories and keep your movies?
I have one that's going to be in my new book that I've already turned into a 90-page screenplay, and I've lost a feature-length budget on it multiple times. I don't want to drop names, but I have a Hollywood celebrity that I've been friends with for about 7 years. He's trying to get a budget for it, but it's a pretty big budget, and it's just kind of hard to get it done sometimes. So that's something we're looking for other ways to do it, but we don't want to go with like a crappy CGI program and have it look like that. And I'm not into the whole AI thing. I mean, it might be a great thing, but I just don't want to get into it. I just something I'm not interested in. So it kind of is what it is. So we may have to go with something else to get it done. But yeah, I have done that, and it's actually a skill set that I'm pretty good at now. I can take a 5 to 7,000 word story and turn it into a 90-page screenplay, which it takes a little plugging and chugging and improvising, but it's actually enjoyable when you see it, becoming something.
Yeah. So, what to you is the biggest challenge of taking a story or a thought on the napkin, like you said, 3 lines into a 90-page screenplay? What to you is the hardest part?
I write now everything that I write script wise, like big stuff. Like let's say I was trying to pitch a 90-page script to you for a feature length film. I try to write as inexpensive as I can, like not the money I'm getting paid, but what you have to spend to make it to get a good story. Like seemingly Curtis Cusbelch was like a small example. It's 50 minutes. I had an idea for 80 minutes. I got my intent done in 50. I was going to spend $500. I ended up spending 250, and it was only 250 because I paid 8 of the people or 7 of the people $25 a piece, and I had to rent $100 room for the demonology scene where the character's talking to that demonologist guy. and that's because they kind of robbed me on the room cost. I was going to get it for 50. They charged me 100. I was like, for 3 hours. I was like, whatever, as long as I don't exceed the 250 or the 500. The 250 when I dropped it to 50 minutes. But yeah, when I write, I try to make something that's interesting, and if somebody reads it, like if you want something, and you say, I'd like to see this, and this. Unless you tell me I have $50 million to blow, but if you want a script or even stuff I write for myself that I'm still trying to pitch, I try to make it that it's interesting. It'll appeal to a great deal of people, and it's inexpensive. It could be done in any state, things like that. You know what I mean? And almost any actor could be interchangeable. It doesn't have to be a beautiful girl or a handsome guy. It could be anybody. It could be me as the lead guy. It could be her as the lead lady, and you still get the same intent. And I think that'll eventually catch on, but it's not always easy to write with an inexpensive mindset. But most stories that truly appeal to people aren't the expensive ones. Like some are like Gladiator and Troy and Star Wars and things like that. But look at Rocky. I always use Rocky as an example. That's a story that it's pretty basic, but it's touched the whole planet. I mean, there's millions of people love Rocky.
Right. And in a different mannerism, when you're writing the screenplay, like you sitting down and decide, okay, we're gonna do this screenplay. When as you're writing it, what is like your biggest challenge that you have to writing them? Is it getting it, like, hey, I only want to, delve 10 hours into writing this script, or is it, how, what is the biggest challenge for like anyone who's looking to write a screenplay to sit there and go, oh, that's the hardest part? Okay, maybe I can do that then, because that's not that hard for me.
I would think like actually two things I would say. One of them is the action lines. Try not to, if you're used to, if you are someone who's used to writing like a book, like I've written books, I've written like you're saying 5 to 7,000 word stories, you're writing in length. In an action line, you don't have to say everything. Try to like abbreviate as much as possible, like, wooden table, comma, spilled milk to left, or something like that. You're giving basic directions, and you're trying to put as much as you can in the smallest action line possible, so somebody can look at it, and they're not like reading a book. They're just reading exactly what they need to see for that scene. And you can always, it's kind of funny with action lines, you can go back a day later and make it even more vague, and or just smaller, not more vague, but you can make it even smaller because you realize you still said too much, and you can shrink things. Like if you wrote a 93-page something and you wanted it to be 90, if you go back, you can actually move your action lines around and make it small. So I think that's important, doing that. And then also when you're writing, kind of know where you're going with it. I think that's part of your question too. I'm sorry, I kind of go off on a
Yeah.
little thing, but kind of know where you're going with it, especially if somebody's paying you to do it. You don't want to, say, oh, you're going to love this. And it's like, I didn't want Martians in there. I didn't, you want to really listen to what somebody says, but especially if they're paying you. I mean, because if someone's paying you, that's rare to get paid for what you do, especially in a script. I mean, because it's, very hard to get something sold. At least for me, it has been. I mean, but
So if somebody was to go to say, okay, I'm going to watch all his shorts and all his movies, read his books, what is the main like goal you have behind all the movies and all the shorts? We'll start there. Like, when people go to watch it, what is your hope they'll get out of all of it?
one word, something, like something, like something they can use. I would say, like, not every story is uplifting, and not every story is a downer. But I think if this, like, if someone's watching a 10-minute short film, I'm hoping they understand it, or if they don't understand it, it's interesting enough to watch it again to get something to understand from it. That they share it because they enjoyed it, but also that they get something from it, especially with the books. I want somebody to pull something out of the book, whether it's a sentence or a paragraph or a whole chapter, and that meant something to them that benefits them. Because like think of things that you liked and things that I've liked. You can look back and you reference them sometimes without even thinking about it. Like you use lines from movies and things like that. They had to be significant if you're bringing them up 30 years later, 40 years later, and they're part of your dialogue that you use a lot. You know what I mean? So that's what I would like for people to get out of stuff that I film and write. Something they can take and use, and they remember it, and it maybe helps them in the future.
That's really admirable. And you say you're a paranormal investigator. And so one of the things that I like, because especially with the latest project, you had a paranormal theme sort of to the movie, but yet it wasn't like in your face saying this is paranormal.
Uh,
And so I congratulate you on that, because that is hard to do, I think, at times, because so many people, when you use the term paranormal, like, oh, we're going to get like, what's that movie series, Paranormal Activity type,
yeah,
or we're going to get alien type, or we're going to get, ghost type. And so there's all these different movies that everybody will map it to. And then yours, it's like, it doesn't really fit all those. So thank you for that, because I think that's more real than a lot of those other movies, because they're not all about the hype.
yeah.
And so when you do, the paranormal movies, how do you determine how much to put in and how much you're like, oh, that's too much?
I think like blood, you never really see a lot of blood in my movies. Like even like well, one of them I did. A guy got his head bashed in a while back. I made brains with ketchup and oatmeal, and then it didn't look too bad. But I don't like getting into the whole goopy blood and things like that. I try to like. It's almost like I don't come at it in a way that it's like we're going exactly to the point. I kind of I've always liked vague things. Like one of my heroes, Rod Serling, creator and narrator of the Twilight Zone. He was I was a little kid when I watched that. My dad introduced me to it when I was like 6, and even at 6, and I wasn't a good student as a kid or in high school or anything. I could extract so much from watching the episodes like once or twice, and I own the whole box set now on DVD. I must have watched them like 10 times since then, since I was a boy. But you get so much out of it because the way he wrote it. If it's going to be a story about a ghost, he doesn't show the ghost, but there's ghostly things happening. I think that scares you more without having something to see. Sometimes you want to see something, yeah. If it's a werewolf movie, Bigfoot movie, you want to see that, menacing creature sometimes. But a lot of times, not seeing it's more scary if you know it's coming after you and the person's crawling through the dirt and you're hearing the noise and you don't see it. That sometimes makes you, it's better for your mind. And that's what I was drawn to with like the Twilight Zone. And I think that's kind of what I do when I'm putting a story together. I don't always show the creature or the monster or the spirit or the entity. I try to make it something so it's more interesting and they feel it throughout and get it at the end, or at least that's the intent.
Well, and what came to mind as you were describing that was like the movie Blair Witch,
Yeah,
where you see him running and you're like, the camera's constantly shaking. To me, I was like, when I watched that, I couldn't even watch the whole movie. I was like, this camera shaking just annoys me. It's like too much. It's like, you've lost me, because I get they're running, but you don't need to make the camera run with them, because
yeah.
that's like, I'm confused now what I'm seeing there. I'm like getting all these different angles, and I'm like, yeah, I get they're running, but you're losing me, because I don't know what to focus on, and so I'll move on. But with you, when you're doing those type of scenes, yeah, it's really cool how you're like, you don't even realize you're watching that unfolding, so to speak. And so,
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Tough to
And
get it done with one camera too. Sometimes you're crawling around in weird places and using strings and having two tripod legs up and one hooked on something else. So don't fall while you're filming it. Just to try to get something done. But yeah, thanks for noticing that. I appreciate it.
yeah, and so what brought you into the paranormal?
Well, I had a weird instance when I was a kid, and that didn't like bring me into it. I think um, it was always intriguing. Like my dad had introduced me to Twilight Zone, for instance, when I was young, and I remember I was petrified when I saw Rod Serling because like he has the lip, and he's kind of like standing in the corner, and it was black and white. And I think our big TV wasn't working, so we had like a moderate sized TV on a chair in the '80s in front of the other TV. Remember, I don't know if that ever happened to your house, but the TV didn't work. You put a kitchen chair there with another TV,
Oh
and
yeah.
so you got the first TV fixed. So watching it on that, it was real dark, and I think it was raining that night. And Rod Serling's like, he goes, "It's a world cut off from sight and sound." And he's doing his narration with the lip, but the way he like appeared when the camera moved, it was scary. But it was almost like you pictured him in your own living room, standing there narrating what you're doing, and it just opened my mind up to listen. And I always remembered that he actually Rod Serling helped me to listen with the Twilight Zone. Washington Irving helped me to listen with Sleepy Hollow. Um, George Orwell with Animal Farm. When I read that in school, I was like, God, I ended up buying the book. I must have read 4 different versions. And then, of course, my other favorite writer, Sylvester Stallone. He's one of the only ones that's living out of that group, and he's written like 40 films, with Rocky being the main one. So it's like, yeah, writers like that can write stuff and keep your mind going long after you read it or viewed it. It's really, something that makes me want to aspire to do that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and if I remember right, because it's been a little while since I've seen Twilight Zone, didn't he have like the old TV style where the the image would be like fuzzy lined and be like all shaky, and then it would come into focus, and then he would do his monologues. So you would think something's wrong with the TV set.
At the beginning, yeah, they changed it, I think, after a while. Because there was one that said at the lamp post ahead is you'll take a left turn or something like that. It's the Twilight Zone. Those were like the older ones because I think it went on from 59 to 64. And I think I like the original beginning because I believe they changed it. At least on the DVDs, it's like that at the beginning. But I know what you're saying with like the fuzziness, and you think, it's going to be one thing and it's another.
Yeah,
But
and
when he starts that narration, that grabbed me like instantly. I was like, oh, so what a genius. You know what I mean? To put that together. And his background wasn't like initially writing either. He was a decorated paratrooper in World War II. He's a, very accomplished guy. And he died young. He died at 50 years old, unfortunately.
yeah, it was sad. And one of the things too, the reason why I bring that up is kids today will have no idea what that means, but for us, we would know if the image was looking like that, we would have to mess with the rabbit ears
Yeah.
to get it lined up, and that's why he would say, "Don't adjust your set. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with your set." And
Or
you're like,
extend the
"What?"
rabbit ear with aluminum foil and bend it so you can get, and then, just don't touch it. He goes, just don't touch it. Sit down so you get the reception. And
Yep.
move things sideways and everything.
I don't think he could get away with that today because with the technology, I don't think people would buy the screen being like that in the
Now,
beginning. They'd be like, "Nope, I'm out. I'm out."
I think actually things that are extremely interesting all ended in 2000. I think that because the decades ended. And what I mean by that is if I said to you the 50s, you get an image. The
Right.
60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, there's no image from 20 to 26. Everything's the same. Phones, even clothes. You can wear what you wore today. You could in 2000 you could have worn it. Nothing goes out of style. It's like one decade. We have a 26-year decade.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that. And that brings into somehow the way my mind works is we were talking in transparency, for the show before we got started that something happened, and I said I would make a note of it for the show. And for some reason, I'm feeling like now is a good segue to it. And that is where you were bumping into people that
Yeah,
were miles away.
this is nuts. And can I mention somebody else's show? Is that all right?
That's fine.
Rafael Diego. He's a friend of yours. I was just on his show 2 nights ago. And, what a cool guy. I really like to text somebody that I haven't met yet, but we get along well. We text each other, always talking about films and stuff. He's just a cool guy. I told two stories on his show. One of a guy I bumped into that I knew of in Rhode Island, meaning I used to see him. Every now and again, I waved to him. We just kind of knew each other from the military, but we weren't friendly. 1,300 miles away in Iowa, I bump into the guy. Made no sense. And I was like, what are you doing here? And he goes, oh, military, you can't dodge. He gave me kind of an attitude, but I explained that on Diego's show. And then another one was a school teacher when I was a recruiter for the Army. I'm talking to her on the phone because I was going to teach gym classes at the school, like what recruiters do when you get assigned to a school. So I talked to the lady on the phone, got her name. She knew Jason Tavares. She knew my whole name. She said she wasn't going to be around till I think that following Tuesday, and this was a Thursday. She didn't say where she was going. I had told her I'm going to New York this weekend anyway with a friend. I bumped shoulders with her coming out of the Empire State Building. Now, the way I knew the way the conversation was, oh, excuse me. She goes, excuse me. I looked at her shirt. She had a zip up on with the school name. And I said, hey, and I said it, and she went, Jason? And her friend goes, you know him? And my buddy was with me. He goes, how do you know her like that? And she goes, the recruiter? I said, yeah. And she was like almost crying. She was so freaked. And I said, yeah. I said, what are the odds of that? What are the chances? And we're laughing. And I said, well, she goes, well, I'll see you on Tuesday. I'm like, yeah, I'll see you on Tuesday. And we're going to walk away. Now, my friend had seen a lot of weird stuff with me through the years. And he went, dude, that's insane. Did you know she was going to be here? I said, she said she'd see me on Tuesday. She was going out of town. I told her I was going to New York. And I went to Long Island first. And then, we drove around. We ended up going there and the Statue of Liberty. But we literally bumped shoulders. Now, two other stories that tie into that I didn't tell on Rafael Diego's show. One of them is I graduated from basic training and artillery school at Fort Sill, Oklahoma in 1992. And I'm catching a plane at Chicago O'Hare, from Oklahoma to O'Hare, from O'Hare to go home, see my family, for the holiday, and then go to Fort Campbell. I was going to be stationed. Well, I'm talking to this guy there. I was 18, and I think he was 25 to 28. And it's small talk. It's before the holidays, and the guys and girls used to travel back then with their dress green uniform on. So I'm fresh out of basic training. I got like one or two ribbons, got the haircut and my dress uniform with the tie because your mom's going to see you at the airport when you get home, so on and so mom and dad, so on and so forth. Everyone's talking in O'Hare. And, this guy's saying, oh, I'm 20, 26 or 20, whatever, getting married soon, so on and so forth. I said, oh, that's cool. And then I just graduated. I'm going to be stationed at Fort Campbell. All small talk. But everybody was so friendly. It was so nice. Fly home, spend time with my family. I was stationed at Fort Campbell after that for 4 years. 10 years later, I'm living in Indiana. I lived in Indiana I said it in a lot of my other shows, 1996 to 2002. Before moving home back to Rhode Island in 2002, it was October 16th of 2002, I physically drove home and went home. But that year, I had flown home for something. I can't remember what it was. I'm in O'Hare. Now, this is 10 years after seeing and meeting this guy for like a 20-minute conversation. I'm getting my ticket. I'm not in a uniform. And I look over again. It's him at the airport. See his newspaper, and I saw how his paper was held and his legs were crossed. And I said, no way, that's the same guy. So I got my stuff and I walked over there and I said, how was the wedding? Because he had said he was getting married and stuff like that. And he goes, how was the wedding? He goes, do I know you? And I said, you don't know me. I said, but we spoke in this same area here at O'Hare about 10 years ago. I had on a green Army uniform, skinny 18-year-old kid. I had a big duffel bag. He goes, I remember. He goes, what? How do you remember me? He was freaked. And everyone around him was listening. And I said, the way you were holding your paper. when I walked over to sit down originally before we started talking in 1992, I remember the paper. You had the newspaper. You had the paper out again. Here it is, 2002. He was blown away, and people are like, "What do you work for the CIA?" Or I said, "No, no, I'm just, I'm not work for anybody like that. No organizations, of that level." But I just kind of put two and two together. I went up to him. He was a little heavier, and I said, how was the wedding? Ended up talking after. He said, "Oh, I'm married. I got two kids." And da da da. And I told him, I said, "Yeah, I just graduated my bachelor's degree out in Indiana, and I'm moving back home. Hopefully this year. I've been thinking about it, not to my mom's, but back to Rhode Island." And it was just funny. And then, I said, "Well, I'll see you again in 10 years." And he started laughing. He goes, "Oh my God, what if I saw you again in 10 years?" Well, I never saw him again. But I did see him 10 years later, same airport. That's weird.
That is.
Like, what are the odds of that? Now, another one, it was in Arkansas. I hate to always have military stories, but I was in the military a long time, so you're going to have military stories. I'm in Arkansas at a school called ANOC. It's Advanced Non-Commissioned Officer School, so you can make your sergeant first class. It's like the sergeant rank with the two rockers under it. So it's the night before the final test. And back then, this was 2006, you had to go through manuals. Like, I think today it's all on the computer, but you had a big tote full of manuals. So when you took your test, a lot of them were open book tests. You had to find the answers in the manual. So you would tab your manuals the night before. So we have a whole table full of soldiers in, I think, PT clothes, like your physical fitness uniform, sitting there tabbing our books, talking, having Cokes, eating potato chips and stuff. If we pass the test tomorrow, we graduate the course. I'm sitting there laughing, telling stories and stuff, and we're all having a good time. I'm telling them about a pay office I worked at in Indianapolis, and I had a major. A major's like in the military, you got like lieutenant, captain, and you got major. The rank is like an 04. So this guy was a major in the military, and he ran that pay office that I worked in back then as like an E5. Here I am making E7. So I thought he was a cool guy. So I remember he talked like this. Like when he said something, he'd be like, "Well, then, there, now." And he put his hands on his hips, and he always had like a big plastic coffee cup, looked like it was this size. And he'd be like, "Hey, Sergeant Tavares, you're heading down to the gym there?" He goes, "Always taking care of physical fitness." And that's just how he talked. So we're all talking and things like that. And I said, "Yeah," I worked at a pay office. I was on orders for 2 years there. It was pretty cool. I'd never worked in an office before. Now I'm a recruiter, so I'm doing a lot of stuff. Da, da, da. I'm talking about him, and he walks by the table. Now, everybody at the table, this was a long table, probably 15 of us all talking. We're all in the same class, some people from another class. He comes walking by, big plastic cup in his hand. I haven't seen this guy since like 2001. I moved out of Indiana October 16th, 2002. Here it is, I'm finishing up ANOC the next day, 2006, in Arkansas. That was Indianapolis. I now live in Rhode Island, going to the school in Arkansas. And I said, and there he is. And everyone looked, and he stopped with his cup. He goes, "Well, then there, Sergeant Tavares." I got up, shook his hand, and he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I'm just graduating ANOC, sir." I said, if we pass the test, we all graduate tomorrow. I explained, I just spoke of you. I just said your name, and there you are. And he goes, "Well, that is strange, isn't it, Sergeant?" Right there. He goes, "Oh, it was nothing bad." I was like, "No, it was nothing bad, sir." He walked away, and the whole table was like this. And one guy was like, "Dude, that's the freakiest thing I've ever seen." And I said, "I'm freaked out." He goes, "Has that ever happened to you before?" And I told him the story I just told you about the 10-year gap from basic training, flying Oklahoma to O'Hare, seeing that guy, and seeing him in 02, and here it is 06. That's just weird. Like, you literally haven't. We weren't even like buddies. I worked in that office when September 11th happened. I went on Homeland Security. I only saw him when I checked him in at the gate. And that was only for 6 months, and I moved back to Rhode Island, 6, 7 months. That's insane, dude. I mentioned him, and you haven't seen this guy in 5 years, and he walked right by the table. Imagine if I had said something bad about him. That would have been really bad. Talk about, stepping on you or whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's what took place. And that I think those two were almost as weirder, or if not as weird, as the two I spoke of on Diego's show.
Yeah, and So normally I do this in the beginning, but I wasn't aware of this, and so if you'll give me a moment, I would like to say, because my dad was in the Navy,
Yeah.
thank you for your service and your sacrifice.
Oh, no problem. You're welcome.
I just like to acknowledge that because I have the mindset of being a history person that I'm like, the way people came back from WW2, Korea, Vietnam, they didn't get the, treatment that I feel like was rightfully should have been shown for
Oh,
the sacrifice that they made and all that they had gone through. And so, out of respect for my father who served, it's like I always like to say thank you for those who serve and make a point of acknowledging that, because that is a huge thing. Even though a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like the military for this or that. I'm like, I don't care. It's still, whatever you believe is up to you. But to me, I think it's something to be honored. It is a sacrifice. And so that's why I do that.
oh, I appreciate it. I actually wish I had gotten more done when I was in. It's like it's funny. It's like the military and almost anything, even school and education. You'll have some people that can do everything's easy for them. Like everything they do is like easy. Like they could go to like special forces school and oh yeah, I went to the school. It's no problem. I was never that guy. I tried hard, um, but I never made it to like those levels. It was either my back was messed up, I never could run fast enough, even though I passed my physical fitness test. But I have to just being honest. I mean, I knew what I was made of and my intelligence level, and I knew I just couldn't reach those levels, not of rank, but of accomplishment. I reached some, probably a lot, more than some people, but not to the level I kind of aspired to do, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean?
It
And it was
does.
always
And
with schooling. Schooling was always hard for me.
yeah. And, it makes total sense. And one thing I'm curious about, because I have a friend who was in the military and he had a paranormal experience and it actually was quoted on TV.
Wow.
And I'm curious, when you were in the service, did you ever come across like something unexplained and you're like, dude, what just happened? And you're like, nope, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to think about that because that's just too far out of the realm at that time? Or were you one of those that was like, dude, did you see that just flow by?
I had an experience that I think outside of the one I didn't really elaborate, but the one that happened in 1988 when I was 14, which maybe opened the door along with my dad showing me other Twilight Zone things. I had an experience, and it was either 93 or 94. I think it was 94, where a friend was killed in a car accident. And the guy that did it, I always kind of blamed him for it because they had been out partying, and I guess the accident took place because of fatigue. And the guy that did it, and I'm not going to drop his name, but a year and a day later, he did it to somebody else. So that always bothered me. That I got over the fact that my friend had died in the accident. He got put in critical and lived, and I ended up kind of forgiving him in a sense. But a year later, when he did it to somebody else, I never talked to the guy again after that. After a year and a day later, I think it was exactly a year and a day later. But long story short, the guy that passed. Now you got to remember, I'm a dumb kid. I'm like 19 years old. We did a Ouija board maybe 6 months after he passed around Halloween. I think it was 94 because he died in 93. Uh, this is an incredible story now. I have a Ouija board that I bought in Rhode Island, in Newport, Rhode Island, at a pawn shop or something like that. And it's just a regular Parker Brothers fold out of the box Ouija board. It's not a wooden one. The planchette's not fancy. It's right out of all plastic. Maybe a 15-year-old board. I'm playing. I had his dog tag chain and a picture of him, which I'm not gonna show his picture, but I still have his picture on the wall. And he died in '93. We did this in '94. The people on the board. One guy's last name. Let me explain the story, and then I'll tell you the abbreviations. All right, I'll tell you abbreviations first. The guy on my right playing the Ouija board, his abbreviated name is SPLNDR, and that's what showed up on the board. The other guy on the board didn't spell his name, but when we asked it questions, it answered questions that from the angles we were at. I told him when you put your fingers on the planchette, you put them on like this. Nobody's pushing this thing. We got it spinning, and when we got the planchette spinning, the flame of a candle that we had did this with the windows closed. And I said, nobody take your hands off the planchette. And we're asking it questions. We said, is there anybody on this board that you miss? We had it moving, and it slid slowly to me because we were friends. So is anybody on the board that you dislike? Slid to him. And I said, I said, who do you dislike on the board? Spell the name. It abbreviated the name, SPLNDR, to abbreviate his name. Now that's creepy. Stopped at each letter. I said, nobody take your hands off. Let's just ask you questions. We had it spinning. I remember one of the legs fell off the table, so we had to put it back on. We were doing it on the floor. Got it spinning again. I said, is there anybody on post that you miss? It spelled out MTCHL and YENZ. It abbreviated two sergeants in his section, an E5 and an E6, that they got along very well, the three of them. It abbreviated their names. That spooked me. So now you got the candle flickering like this and sometimes staying steady. And I asked it to say goodbye. It slid near goodbye. And I said, nobody take your hands off. Make it say goodbye. I got a couple more spins, made it say goodbye, boxed it, and never played it again. And I only got rid of it. I bought this house in 2019. I sold my condo in 2018. And my condo had tons of insane stuff that took place there, like scary stuff. And I had that in the closet the whole time. And I only got rid of it then. So my girlfriend that she lives with me there for a while now. She lives there with me. She goes, you had that in the closet the whole time? I said, yeah, but I never opened it. And she goes, is that the one you played when you did the Ouija in 1994? I said, yeah. And she said, that's probably why all that weird stuff happened. I said, no, I said, I think something follows me. Something follows me. But I always thought he protects me. Because whatever happens to me, as scary and odd as things are, I never get hurt. And I think maybe he's on my side. I really do.
Yeah,
Strange feeling, but
yeah, I think, there are times where we, are looking at, stuff going on and wondering this or that. And we always, are quick to go, oh, that's a ghost. Ooh, that's creepy. Ooh, that's scary. But we rarely sit there and go, they're watching out for me.
yeah.
And so I think it's really cool that you had that realization and you were like, yeah, something was following me, but it was protecting me. And
I
so
kind of
that's,
wonder if maybe that opens something up playing it at such a young age because, like, my knowledge of it then, you figure no one had the internet in 93, 94. My knowledge of it was watching, like, maybe a movie that was on it or something that came on Friday night or Saturday night. That was it. And maybe a couple of periodicals I might have read or, that's it. There was not like you can Google things then. So I knew to keep your hands on it and never remove your hands and never play alone. So here I am flying with buying this Ouija board, and my girlfriend then, way back when, not the same girl now, she's like, "You're gonna bring that back to base?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, you can play it in the back. She's, "Oh, you're crazy." And I said, "Oh, I like this stuff, but it's not a game. It's probably the furthest thing from a game that's readily available. Probably the most dangerous board game. Oh,
yeah,
it's not shoots and ladders.
I know. I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, how in the world did this ever get past any censors
Yeah.
to say this is a game for kids? It's like, no, it's not.
I see YouTubers posting videos where they're playing in a graveyard by themselves. Like, what are you insane? It's not a joke. I mean, because you think you're talking to somebody. Even what we were doing, we may have been talking to a demon. You
Yeah.
never know. Demons were never human. I mean, for it to know all that, I doubt we summoned Steve and he was there. I really do. I mean, it spelled out SPL and SPNLDR, YENZ, MTCHL. It gave exactly what I asked. And this whole experience of us doing this, between, hey, you do it like this and the candle bending, it couldn't have been more than 10 minutes before that thing was boxed up, night was over. It's like, you know, that's it, guys. Go back to your room, because we had our own rooms and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a game. Absolutely not a game.
No, and a funny story I have with the Ouija boards is I was at a Para Unity event, and it was at this location where I crew as a haunted actor during a haunted house. And one of the kids came up to me because they know I'm a paranormal investigator, and they go, "Oh my god, I have to ask you something." And I go, "What?" She goes, "I was playing with the Ouija board and it started to move on its own, and so we threw it in the fire." And I was like, "Wait, you did what?" And she goes, "Yeah, we threw it in the fire. Was that not the right thing to do?" And I was like, "No, not really. That was like the worst thing you could have done." And she goes, "Why?" I go, "Because whatever was moving that, you have now stuck here until it can find a way home."
Yeah,
And she was like, "Oh." I was like, "Yeah."
that
We're
kid
like,
might become a conduit. You never know.
I know. It's that's why, it's like, as you say, it's not a game. It really
No,
isn't. People, don't realize, like, even, sitting down to do Estes method or do an EVP session, you're opening portals and you have to remember to close them and send whoever came through back.
yeah,
And a lot of teams don't. And I sometimes wonder, as places talk about ramping up and everything, how many teams have gone through, opened all these things, never closed, and so you have one, two, three, four portals open
yeah.
constantly feeding this area, and it's like, yeah, we need to really, stop opening things we don't realize we're opening. And I get, if you don't know any better, but as you grow as an investigator, you're supposed to learn and realize things and, go, ooh, need to stop doing it that way. We have to do it this way now. And I would hope everybody's learning from that.
Well, I think people have to see things to understand them. Like, not to kick a beehive. Why? Because you get torn apart by bees. A lot of stuff with that, they think, like you said, they didn't close a portal. You're not seeing the result until something happens. Then there's a result that now it's an unexplainable result and you're stuck with it. It's not an instant result like the beehive. So I think
Mhm.
people don't, until people realize, like, that's like, it's like with praying. A lot of people may not pray because, like, oh, well, I pray for it didn't happen. Well, it might happen in a different way. You know what I mean? It depends on your religion and what you believe, but I don't know. I think with a lot of stuff, especially now, probably more so than ever, people are so fixed on instantaneous gratification. Everything's at a click of a button. Religion, you're not going to get instantaneous gratification. You might get instantaneous horror with a Ouija board, but you also may not. And if you mistreat it, like throwing it in the fire, not closing out properly, saying goodbye, that's because you're not seeing the result doesn't mean it's not already there. Or it's going to come up at a later time when you really don't want it to happen, or follow you.
Right. And I'm kind of curious. I don't know if you've ever been asked this or not, but when you're on investigations or you're watching shows, if you ever do, what are like two of your top pet peeves that you see people do and you're like, why on earth did you do that?
One of them is when they walk in a room and go, "Ooh, what was that?" On the shows, you mean? Like when you say, "I
Yeah.
hate that." I'll change the channel. I won't watch it. Sometimes it's like so foolish. They go, "Oh, what was that?" They're saying, "What was that?" They just got in the room, but they're doing that for ratings. But if I'm with people and we're doing stuff, the guys I go out with, they're all pretty straight shooters. So they don't really see anything that's out of the ordinary. But stuff that I've observed with other groups, and I'm guilty of this, is taking things from places. And I had explained on Rafael Diego's show, I had taken a big crystal out of the ground in the Bridgewater Triangle. You know what the Bridgewater Triangle is, right? I
Right.
took a big crystal. I wanted my friend to have it. I said, "Oh," he goes, "That's so cool." And I said, "You want to take it home?" He goes, No, that's cool. You take it to your house. And I had a whole bunch of stuff took place, which I talked about on his show, but I don't know if it was because of it, but after I got rid of it, it stopped. And I didn't get rid of it for a while. And we had problems for like 90 days, give or take. Problems to the point that it was almost ridiculous. Like I could make a list of problems, but it wasn't cause of that, but it was still there when it took place. So I mean, you never know. I mean, you can blame it on something. I like to blame it on that.
And
You
I'm
know?
not sure if you mentioned or not, but I just want to get clarity as we're talking about that. When you got rid of the Ouija board, because I'm pretty sure you said you
The,
did the activity that you were noticing stop when you got rid of it, or did it
well, I
continue?
actually got rid of the Ouija board when I sold the condo. So my condo was sold in 2018. It was totally empty. The Ouija board, I taped it up with masking tape and just threw it in the dumpster. So maybe somebody else is using it now. And that was kind of a dumb way to do it. I should have chopped it up in little pieces. But it hadn't been open since, God, 94, 93, 94, probably 94. So I just taped it up and got rid of it. Just
So,
threw it
but
right in the dumpster with other stuff. So I didn't really. That's probably not the best way to dispose of one either.
I'm curious because you were saying stuff was happening while
At the
you
condo,
had
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Did
that condo had so much. Here's a funny one. I'll tell you a funny story. I bought the condo in 2006. Stupid me. My truck was parked outside. I locked the handle, I think it was, with my wallet, my keys, and my phone on the couch, looking at them, and I shut the door. I'm locked out of my house. So I'm like, oh crap. It was a sunny day, so I didn't think anything of it. My mom only lived 2.5 miles away, or like a mile and a half away, give or take, maybe 2 miles. So I said, let me walk to my mom's, get a set of keys. I made an extra set of keys, left them at her house. I'm walking down. This is a sunny day. Walk down out of my condo to the end, down a little road that leads into it, and I found a blue medical card this big, the ones that with the two holes punched in it that you'd see on a lot of the older files. It was in the dirt on the side of the curb. So I said, oh crap, it's a trick I learned years ago. I took it to the door, carded the door because it was only the handle and not the deadbolt. My keys were on the couch, popped it open, got my stuff, and I cleaned the card in the sink. And it said Riflikin A. Stevens. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but RL Riflikin, RFLK, some name like that. But if you sounded it out, it sounded like Riflikin, middle initial A, last name Stevens. Right next door to where I lived, and the building's still there today, was a Patuxent Village nursing home. And it closed, I think, in '06 or '07. So here, I just bought this place in '06. I said, hey, let me return this medical card. Walk over there, they were still open, walked in, there was a nurse there. And I said, I wanted to return this medical card. I found it. I just moved in over there. I found it right off the curb in the dirt, and it was covered in dirt. I washed it, but I used it to card my door first. So I wanted to say thank you to Riflikin, and I returned it. The lady looked at me and took the card. And she goes, where did you get this? I said, I just explained it to you. I bought the condo. My door is literally, if you're looking out these glass doors, I'm the second door, 102, over there at the Village Green. I found the card in the dirt, washed it, opened my door. I went to say that I was returning it. She goes, he just passed away, Mr. Stevens. And I looked at her and I said, how would I know that? I was like weirded out by it. She goes, there's no way you could have got this. This is from his file. And I said, well, call the police. I told her again. She goes, thank you, sir. Just like really bitchy toward me. I was like, I did something nice. I found this card,
yeah,
opened the door. But isn't that creepy though? He says he died today. She goes, there's no way you'd have this card with old dirt on it. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I walked out, but I was blown away. It was the first instance, and I had only been there like 2 or 3 weeks.
that is crazy and wow. And
Yeah, it's really wild. I said, I don't know him. She goes, how do you know him? She even said, how do you know Mr. Stevens? I said, again, found the card in the dirt. I said, I just bought that unit with the green door over there with the tree and the big plastic owl. I'm returning it. So she was like that, like drawn back. So when I, renovated it 2 or 3 times to her, she was just like, thank you, sir. And I walked out. I was like, oh, whatever. So
should have made up some elaborate story.
I know. I thought
We
that
were
was
walking in the
elaborate, actually.
meadows like 5 minutes ago, and he's like, "Here, go get this back to them for me." Watch her really
It's
freak
it's
out.
funny that it literally had old dirt on it. Like, here's the curb, and it was in the dirt, like, with the dirt next to the curb. I remember I pulled it a little to get it out of the dirt. It was that caked with dirt. I was like, wow. So I wiped off my hand, washed it inside in the sink. It was pretty clear with like the braille because it's raised letters on those blue cards of the two holes. And
Right.
she was pretty adamant that I stole it. She's like, oh, she goes, no way you could have had that. And I almost like said, geez, I broke in the hospital and I stole a blue card. I mean, it was like getting to be that stupid. I wanted to actually say it to her like that, but I didn't. I just
I
said,
don't know,
oh,
I almost would have said, "Go get his card. Go get his file and see if the card is in there."
if the card's on there, yeah. But she said, there's no way you could have this card. I was like,
That
all right.
would have,
So
yeah, that would have been like a movie for you if the card
I
was in
know.
the file and you have it in your hand. It's
Imagine
like,
that.
wait a
They,
minute, how do you
they
have
probably
two?
had multiple ones, but for it to be outside, maybe somebody, a family member threw it out a window of a car. You never know, I mean, how it got there. But the dirt was old. It looked like it had been rained on and just there for a
Yeah,
long. That's eerie. It's very, very, very eerie.
that is really crazy. And so we are actually, wow, at an hour and 22 minutes. So where can people find like your books and your movies?
Oh, well, my name, Jason J. Tavares on YouTube. Um, all my films are on there. I have Jason's Disturbing Experiences on there as well. They're all filmed kind of like just a straight shot right from my kitchen table. And a lot of the experiences that I, talked about tonight on Raphael's show and other shows that I've been on, you can see on, I think I have 8 of them on there on Jason's Disturbing Experiences. And I also have the Jason J. Tavares show for Right Brained Entertainers. It was an actual TV show on the Access Channel in Rhode Island. I had from 2016 to 2017, and I made the show for writers, directors, producers, sculptors, anybody who's right-brained can be a guest. So I went in there to be on somebody else's show, and they said, "Oh, the show, they're not taking new people right now or whatever. How about you have a show?" And I said, "I don't have a camera crew. I don't have anything." They said, "Oh, we do it all right here." I was like, cool. So I did it for a year, one episode a month for a year. And I said, it was the experience and it was cool. And, I did it for the year. But, so I had my own show there, plus all my, you know, movies are on the channel as well. And then my books under the same name, Jason J. Tavares, are on Amazon. And I have a LinkedIn page too as well if anybody wants to, reach me on that under the same name. So.
Very cool. And so being what you do and everything, do you have a message that you'd like to leave the future generation with?
For which one? For the paranormal or for the writing?
For both.
I would say whatever you do is, and I'm not trying to sound like weak with this. If you're not hurting anybody or anything with what you're doing, keep doing it. And look at things like this. Well, with binoculars. Try to look at things in your life like this. Because if that's your goal and you're looking for, and this is from this is like me telling you this from me being beaten down by people through the years with different things. Don't listen to people as much. I mean, if somebody says, "Hey, you got food on your shirt," I'd listen to that. Yeah, I got food on my shirt. I got to clean it up. If somebody's telling you, "Oh, your books are stupid. Your movies are stupid. Paranormal's dumb." Thanks. That's your opinion. If you know what you want to do and what you're getting out of it, you're not hurting anybody or anything in the process, keep doing it. Say thank you. Or this one's fantastic, and I've used this before. This is like a baseball bat over the head. Like it really is. Do something, get it done. Don't tell anybody you got it done, and then bring it up to somebody that you know secretly or openly likes to knock you for things. Like, for instance, let's say you wanted to get an associate's degree. Let's just say, go out and get the associate's degree, have it already done, and then say to that person, I'm thinking about going back to school and getting an associate's degree, and having them say, "Oh, geez, you could never pass that." "Oh, yeah, here it is. I already did it." Something like that. I did that with one of my books, and the person never talked to me again. And I'm glad. I hope I never see them again. So if somebody's going to belittle you and not encourage you, sometimes they're not encouraging you for something where you may get hurt. That's different. If it's something that could, hurt you and they care about you, and you should have the sense to know that. But if it's just somebody knocking you because they can't get things done, then I would kind of, just be very careful. You know what I mean? Like you said, keep people at arm's length, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. Kind of categorize them like that because they're not helping you.
That's very true, and that's great wisdom. And um, I do have a message for you, and that is from the heart of my show and myself. Thank you for what you're doing for the community.
Oh, thank you.
It's
Appreciate
seen,
it.
it's heard, and so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on today, too, man. This was a great experience. I really appreciate it.
Yes, and I'm so glad that Diego put us together. And I gotta admit, it was like I was a little bit nervous because I was like, all I seen was what we talked about and the movie, and so I was like, okay, what are we really gonna talk about? What are Because this is like I said in the beginning, I've never had a show like this, but I gotta say, I'm really glad I did it, and it was really cool to hear your take and your experiences. And so my hope is whoever is watching this will go, people say I should make a movie. Well, this guy did it, and he's talking about he's got a 10-year-old camera and he's doing it.
No,
I could do that and actually start to try and do it and make it happen. So thank you for that.
oh, no problem. And if anybody out there ever wants to contact me, I'd be happy to speak with you on how to do things. I'm not an expert, but you might be better than me at it. You might take what I say, learn some stuff on your own, and run and have something twice as good. So, if somebody have any has questions or anything like that, they can always contact me.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you to everybody who's watching and everything. And so I will go ahead and send us out with the outro, and hope everyone has a wonderful night. And wow, I almost went and said something that a radio DJ used to say at the end of his shows. And I was like, ooh, good thing I didn't, because that's probably trademark and didn't want to get in trouble. But it's funny how you're like, you're saying, it's like things just pop in your head, and it's like you remember from things that you used to listen to. Because, like, that radio station, I haven't listened to in like probably 10 years, but I can still remember that tagline. And I was like, why did that just pop in my head?
It's a funny line I was thinking the other day, and it really would resonate with kids today. It should actually be put out in schools. In Rocky, remember when Apollo Creed was on the TV set at the bar, and Rocky's having the beer, and he looks up to the guy. He's looking up to Apollo Creed, and Apollo Creed said, he goes, stay in school, carry a leather briefcase, become a doctor, be a lawyer. He goes, remember, sports make you grunt and smell. Be a thinker, not a stinker. That was
Yeah.
a great line. I know Stallone wrote it, but Carl Weathers just delivered it like perfectly. You know what I mean? I was thinking that the other day. So that's such a powerful thing for kids to hear, to stay in school and to try to make something of themselves.
Yeah. And being, our age, because I'm assuming we're in close age from the years that you mentioned. I saw a meme the other day, and I know people make fun of me for saying meme, but it was the egg in a frying pan.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes, if you remember what this means, you and I could be great friends. And I was like,
That's
oh
funny.
my God, I remember those commercials now.
Oh, where's the beef?
No, this is your egg. The egg in the frying pan goes.
Oh,
This
no,
is
no, I
your.
know, but I meant like where's the beef's like around the same time.
Oh yeah,
Or time to make the donuts.
or grandma throwing the tire through the window.
Yeah, we had some funny stuff back then.
Yeah,
A
I
lot of
kind
stuff
of
to
miss it.
remember.
Yeah, Danny Hack is saying your brain on drugs. I was like, yeah. I
Yeah,
always thought that was the nuttiest slogan with the use of an egg, and it's like now I can look at it and go, I actually get it now. When I was younger seeing it, I was just thinking you're frying an egg with breakfast. What does that got to do with my brain? But it's like
another
now I
great
get it.
commercial. when we were kids. Do you remember the one? I don't remember the company, but it was for kids looking out for themselves. They were telling you what a stranger was, and it showed like
Oh,
a guy in a leather jacket, and they said that guy might not be the stranger, and the camera shows a guy in a suit. And so it was everybody showing that everybody's a stranger, not just
yeah,
somebody who like that guy was scary, looked like a biker. He might not be the creep. This guy in the suit might be the creep. So I thought
yeah.
that was, I don't remember what it was for, but I think it was maybe the McGruff crime program. I think it was
I
for
think
that,
it
the
was.
dog McGruff. That
Yeah,
was a great scenario to show kids, you know?
yeah, and you like you were saying, when you're writing certain things, less is more.
Yeah.
The slogan "Stranger Danger." That is like two words, but it's like ingrained in my head, and
Yeah.
even to this day, I'll be walking along and I'll be like, and I'll sense somebody, like walking close, and and it'll be like my brain will go "Stranger Danger," and I'll turn and I'll kind of walk the other way a little bit.
Yeah, so it's an
So
effective slogan. You still use it today. That's great.
yeah,
Yeah, it's funny. Things from back then were very powerful. Today, everything is so it got so babyish, and it's like nothing's being learned. I mean, things have to kind of be drilled in your head sometimes, and the world can be a cold and horrible place, and it's not always a cold and horrible place, but it can be, and I think people need to be prepared for it because it's
yeah,
not always 100 miles away where something happens. Something could happen right in your own driveway, or even inside your house. I just think people have to be a little more aware, locking doors, locking windows, looking over your shoulder. Not paranoid, but just, situational awareness in a sense.
right, yeah. We had the common sense to not leave temptation out, like not leave
Yeah.
your keys in the car unlocked in the driveway and expect to wake up in the morning to your car in the driveway with the keys and everything still in it. It's like that was your own dumbass fault for
Well, I said it
leaving
was
the
a big
keys
culture
in the
shock.
car visible. It's
Yeah,
like
it was a big culture shock for me when I moved out west. I mean, not Kentucky, but when I lived in Indiana, nobody locked their doors. So, like, I went
yeah,
over like a girlfriend's house out there. She go, "Oh yeah, you could just come in. The doors unlocked." I said, "Why are your doors unlocked?" She goes, "We don't lock doors." I'm like, "What?" I said, "Geez, the apartment I grew up in when I was little, my dad used to put a chair in front of the door sometimes because of the people that lived downstairs. This was in the '80s." So
yeah,
I mean, I went from that vision of the chair in front of the door to them. Their doors open all night. I was like, "Oh, that's insane." They don't. They probably don't do that today, but they did in the '90s. Which, I
yeah,
always remembered that. I was like, "Oh, you don't lock your doors." Oh, I wouldn't be able to sleep.
yeah. And Danny Hawk brought up the Dare program, and a funny story about that is I remember it growing up, being in school and everything. And then when 2020 hit, I worked for 3 months for a company that was raising money for Dare. And I was like, and when they first told me that, I was like, oh my God, Dare is still around
Oh,
because it had been quiet, so to
yeah.
speak. And I was like, wow, it's still around.
Well, it's funny too. Even like diseases like AIDS, you don't hear about it anymore. It used
Yeah.
to be everywhere. It was on TV. People had shirts. It's still there. It's still affecting people, but you don't hear about it. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the other end of the spectrum from what you're saying. But I mean, it's like things that are still relevant, but not spoken of as much.
Right. It's like our generation, it's like we remember a lot of things, and it's like, did they disappear? And they're like, no, they're still there. Just apparently we just don't care anymore.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of things. Like people, yeah, you're right. They don't. People don't care. A lot of important things are overlooked. And it's really sad. Like I said, it's a continuing decade from 2000 to 2026. We don't have any change. Like you'll never hear anybody say, "Oh, geez, the 2010s." There's no name to even call it. You
Yeah.
can't call the 2020s. You can call it that, but it doesn't have a 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s memory ring or anything. Like 90s, you had music, you had, just the music was awesome. It totally changed. You had the style changed. It was kind of like more like a 50s style for guys, the t-shirts tucked in or the grunge. I mean, I don't know, just different feel completely.
Mo- My theory on that is when we get to like 2050, 2060,
Yeah,
then they're going to be like, well, in the 20s, this happened. And everyone's going to be like, oh, the 2020s. Yeah. It's like
yeah,
everyone's going to forget about the 1900s.
yeah. The depression,
And
like that.
we're too close to the 1900s. So if we were to say the 10s,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you're talking about 1910s? No, we're talking 2010s. Oh,
Well, you know, it's a
okay.
concept that always blows my mind is that, and I talk to some people about it, and a lot of people, like even smart people, some are like perplexed when I bring it up. Like, oh, well, it's because of this, it's because of that. We human beings as you and I are now, argumentatively go back between 60 and 120,000 years ago. I've heard 80,000 years, I've heard 100,000 years, the way we are now, bone structure and everything. Why have we only just gotten smart in like 200 years? And I've brought that up to a lot of people, like, oh, technology. And it's like, I know it's technology. Why do we only have it in 200 years? And Jesse James was an outlaw in the 1880s. He had covered wagons. They rode a horse wherever they went. People didn't take baths for a month. There was no dental plans. That was only in the 1880s. How can we go from that to talking about colonizing Mars? And if let's say we did go back 120,000 years, we were stupid for 119,000 some odd years. It doesn't make sense. I think something had to, since this is paranormal, we talk about it. Something had to intervene to get us to where we are now. I don't know what intervened. I'm not saying one thing or pushing anything, but something happened to get us, off of the square wheel, so to speak, to have things rolling. It just, we were in the dark ages in a sense for so long. Even though some, like you had the Incas, you had the Mayans, you had the Greeks, you had Romans, you had the Egyptians, they had fantastic things. Like the Romans had waterways and flushing toilets, and that was all incredible. But it wasn't the technology of today. And even though it was brilliant, it never would have become what it is now. But it was fantastic in its own way. What happened in these years to make that happen in the last 200 years?
Yeah. And, a couple of things that like jump into mind, just to say, along those lines of, awareness and everything is, space weather. It's like that's the new frontier, so to speak, is, oh, we have a solar storm coming. And so now you need to brace yourself because this, can cause you a headache, or you could have, low energy this day because of this storm. And it's like we're no longer really, a lot of people aren't like, oh, it's raining outside. Okay. Now it's like, oh, it's raining outside and we got solar wind coming in. Okay. Gonna have a really interesting day today. And so it's like, I feel like in the last 200 years, we've kind of gone from looking at ourselves as being earthbound to, well, there's something more out there. And I'm not talking aliens, I just mean out in space
Uh,
that we don't understand, and we're interested because we're going out there and we're looking at it. And one question I have for you, as we talk about, different things, awarenesses and stuff, is, what is your viewpoint of the moon? Is it a piece of the earth that broke off, or do you think it's something that was brought to the earth?
I think it is made of cheese. No, I'm just. But I haven't really given it much thought. But I do know that, or I've heard that some countries are traveling there and they want to put businesses on the moon. Is everybody aware that if the moon does get jacked up, it affects the tides and everything to do with here? I mean, that goes right back to what you're saying, that people are thinking of all these different places and kind of forgetting everything that we have here. It's almost like it's like secondary. I mean, if you affect that moon, this planet is destroyed potentially. Could
Yeah.
affect tidal waves, could affect everything. I mean, I don't know, like you're saying, the thought process of people, I just don't get it anymore. It's hard to understand because there's too many thought processes going on. now. There's more than ever, and it's like having too many chiefs and not enough Indians. That old saying.
Right.
That's what it's kind of become.
And I gotta admit, with them talking about going to Mars, I can't help wondering if, since I've been reading about like programs that are designed to cut the population because they feel like it's getting too high. If we we find out we can be on Mars
Mhm.
and build houses on there, it's like, are we gonna take the best of or worst of the planet and go, here, we're shipping you off to Mars? Now we have extra space and we can go another several generations and then go, hey, now we got to find another planet to go, and or two
Well,
planets now because we're overpopulating now two planets.
well, one thing is definite is that humans do not learn. They may learn math, they may be able to run faster, and they live longer. We do not learn. History teaches that humans will not learn, and they do not learn, and we're self-destructive. And
Yeah,
anyone could argue that, oh, geez, my grandmother's not self-destructive. My husband's a nice guy. I'm not saying your husband. I'm not talking about your grandmother. But us in general, people in general,
yeah,
where we can learn things, but we never change. Like look at our history. Our history is horrible. I mean,
yeah. It's a
it's really
repetitive cycle.
frightening.
Yeah, they've actually noticed our history is in cycles where we'll have a war, then there'll be peace, then there'll be war, then we'll have peace, and then there'll be another war, and then there will be peace, and then another war. And it's like this repetitive cycle for several thousand years that it's like, have we never like really thought of this to go, hey, maybe we should try something different? Because I'm no expert, but to me, I'm like, if we already know this war is going to lead nowhere and we're going to have a temporary peace and another war, you know, I remember, World War II was the war to end all wars. Well, that didn't last very long because then we were in Korea and then we were
Yeah.
in Vietnam, Persian Gulf. It's like there is no war to end all wars. So maybe try something different, but nope, we always do the same old and go, well, don't know why it's not changing. Well, because you forgot about what Einstein said, and that is if you repeat the same thing over and over and expect a different
Yeah.
outcome, you're the dumbass.
Yeah. The description of an idiot.
Yeah,
That's funny. Is it okay if I hold up two cards real quick?
go ahead.
This one is my movie that you and I were discussing, seemingly Curtis Cusbelch, and it can be found on my YouTube, Jason J. Tavares channel. So Jason J. Tavares for YouTube, seemingly Curtis Cusbelch is the film.
You got your camera on mirror because the writing was backwards. So if you took
Oh,
the
really?
mirror effect off, it'll put them straight.
How do you fix that?
It's in the settings,
Yeah, I'm not gonna mess with it now because I might end up shutting the whole thing off. It's back to that technology thing.
but
So for when I
I
get
just
yelled
point
up,
that
it's
out
when
for
they want
you.
you
And
to hold up a mirror.
yeah, I just point that out for you in future that if you're gonna hold up a card,
That's
you
reversed. That's
gotta
right.
make
Yeah.
sure it's not reversed.
Well,
But
since
it
you
was clear
mentioned it,
enough.
maybe they'll watch it and hold up a mirror and they'll see it. I mean, that's a
It
great.
was clear enough. I could tell what you were saying, but yeah. So thank you for coming on tonight and sharing with us, and hopefully we can get you back on later and promote, your next movie or future books that are coming out.
Sounds good. Yeah, I got a new book being made. I have a new film coming out in May, and hopefully some other stuff too. So I definitely like to come back on. I appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you, and I'll be sure to send Diego a thank you for putting us together. And with that, I'm going to send us into the outro. And so I know we said this earlier, but I mean it this time. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and we will see you on the next episode. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.